Commentators been asking me what do I think about the Japanese deal, and now of course we have the EU deal on the table. And this is what I believe. I believe that it doesn't matter about these deals, and I'll explain why. First, um, these deals are about the old world. Yes, it's our first foray into what the new world is going to look like, but think about it. A country cannot change their supply chains, the contracts they sign, the shipping. All these things have been lined up for years and years and years. There's no way that a country has the ability of saying in 3 months, you know, America, we're not going to deal with you. We're going to go another way. They don't have that capability. It's literally impossible. It's impractical. So thereby, what they do is they try to mitigate what is happening now, the first year or 2 years. And when you look down, you say, well, how long is this going to take them to, let's say, get in position? I'm going to say minimum 3 to 5 years, probably 5 to 10 years. Then we'll know. So I would say any of these deals today, we're working with a major advantage, the U.S. is, because they can't change that fast. They just can't. 5 years from now, we're going to find out if these deals made sense, if it's the right thing to do, and so forth and so on. But right now, I would say this is kind of like the transition, old world, new world, the very first thing ever done. And I don't think these countries have really any good options. China, just got another 90 days. There is no doubt in my mind that the 90 days comes because of the rare earth minerals. And now they're saying Trump's looking for the grand deal. He needs a grand deal. I saw an ex-general, Army general last week go, I don't think we declare war for 7 or 8 years because of REM. And I was kind of taken back that our general would say that. Even though an ex-general, if you know how the military is run, they are all connected. But then, 2 days later, in the Stars and Stripes, which is the mouthpiece of our military, what comes out? Stars and Stripes says that we actually literally cannot declare war for the next 8 years. So, that's why China's getting another 90 days. They're going to look for a grand agreement so we can get REM, okay? Now, what I want to do today is say, okay, given that we can't really judge what's going on with the deals, and we can't, we just, there's these things that we win, they lose, it's meaningless. Here's the question. What is Europe going to look like in 2040, right? This is what we want to know. And because then everyone's going to have time to make the moves. And I believe that we should look at this according to the 5 factors, okay? And the 5 factors are food, energy, technology, demographics, and are we easy to attack? Security, okay? So all the countries will make their decisions based on those 5 factors. In my mind, the biggest issue facing the Europeans are their demographics. They're horrific. And these countries are, this is going to be a issue much sooner than people think. People look at demographics and we think in 20-year terms, okay? But look at Spain and Italy and Greece. Basically, they need, each one of them, 1.5 million to 2 million people under the age of 25 per year for 20 years to maintain their population levels. Germany's short about 5.5 million workers, trained workers. We're not talking about people who sweep the streets. We're talking about, skilled workers. They don't have it anymore. So demographics is going to be a huge issue for everybody. So here's the map for NATO countries. And again, I don't believe there is any political treaty or military treaty that exists that actually exists. They're a name, but they don't exist anymore. You can agree or disagree. So here's the countries that use the euro, okay? So they use the euro, but they're not in the EU. Here are the countries in the EU. So you can now see how do you solve this Rubik cube of different competing interests, competing organization, and actually there's no overall organization that actually counts because each country is separate. Look what Spain's going through now. They're using Huawei, and Europe is going wild, America's going wild, but you know, I mean, the truth of the matter is that, think about this. In Europe, every country is responsible for their own security. They are not the Euro. They're not Europeans. They're still separate countries. Now, I just believe that the Europeans and the Russians are intertwined for the future because it makes too much sense. When you look at Russia, what do they bring? They bring food and energy, and they got a good amount of people, but their demographics are just as bad. They're just a little bigger than other countries, okay? And so I believe when you look at the Europeans, what do they need? They need food and energy. Who has food and energy? The Ukraine and the Russians, okay? To me, if I was Europeans, I'd be in Ukraine already, but I believe as time goes on that the Russians and the Ukrainians and the Europeans will come together, name your country, Pan-Eurasia, Pan-European Eurasia, I don't care, but they will be together because together they can solve for the 5 factors. So thereby, I think it'll happen. So you can see Europe here on the left, and you can see where Russia goes all the way to the other side. I just want to say this. At the end of World War II, towards the end, the United States was just fighting Japan, and we were begging the Russians to attack into China because the Japanese had 1 million soldiers there, and we needed them to put some pressure on them. They waited till after the nuke, and then the Russians went in and stole a bunch of territory from the Chinese. And I don't think the Chinese have forgotten that whatsoever. And when you look at the population map of Russia, you can see their population density is all in the West, all right? And so I think that the Far East for the Russians is not going to exist much longer. And in fact, there's been a leaked FSB report, and they come out and they say that they believe, the Russians believe, that the number one threat to Russia is China taking Eastern Russia from the Russians. And here you can go through and see what they say, but this is what they believe. Up here in the red, that little thing, that's the Ural Mountains, okay? So there's nobody, we already saw that lives on the eastern side of that. I think the Russians, along with the Europeans, will defend this line. And then this part of the world will be able to solve, among themselves, the 5 factors. They will have food, energy, technology. They will be hard to attack. And their population is something that has to be figured out. But let's put it this way. They're better together than they are apart. In fact, if you're reading the news today, you'll see that Putin said, you're paying like 3.5 times for the LNG from America when we can give you the cheap gas through the Nord Stream. Look, it just makes economic sense. I understand the politics. I understand Russians are bad, we're good, and all this other stuff. It doesn't matter in the end. It's real politics, and real politics are driven by need of economics. And the economics are the 5 factors. That's what everyone has to solve for. And so when you look around and you go, China, let's take Taiwan, why would you take that? Look what you did with Hong Kong was perfect. And I think they just move in and take Eastern Russia from the Russians. I don't think anything's going to stop them. Nothing at all. So 15 years from now, I think China will have that. Russia will be back at the Urals. The Russians and the Europeans and Ukrainians will be one. I'm not sure on the bifurcation. I think Spain, Italy, and Greece will go the Mediterranean, Northern African way, but that remains to be seen. So what do you think? Are we going to be just talking old-time politics, or are we going to talk about what's going to happen in the new world? Tell me in the comments, like and follow, and thank you for listening.